if you're going to get assassinated, we will too, somewhere. So I'm definitely in. I've got to stop investing in my guests, but screw it.
There is a possibility of somebody turning internet switch on off. So we want to not even have an option.
Are you completely insane? That's my first question. You're going to literally build a decentralized network of satellites.
Yep.
As an engineer, I'm just thinking of like 100 problems just on a software level. A lot of people think of Starlink and satellite internet as being more free in some ways, but you're actually arguing it's more centralized. Welcome to Korea, where we're going to be talking on our second episode of Herman's podcast with probably one of the most ambitious, slightly crazy entrepreneurs I've met in crypto, who's literally trying to build the decentralized cyberpunk network of space stations and satellites that will give us decentralized internet.
Thank you for having me, Herman.
Thank you for coming to episode 2 of my podcast. And I think for the audience who don't know you, you're probably making one of the hardest things I have literally ever heard of anyone building. And if it succeeds, I think could be one of the most important projects in crypto.
Oh, thank you.
So tell us about yourself. Tell us about Spacecoin.
So, hi everyone, I'm Tae. I'm a founder and CEO of DevCo called Glua. At Glua, we founded 2 projects. The first one is called Creditcoin, and the second one is called Spacecoin. Creditcoin, we founded around 2017, and we were on a mission to basically bank the unbanked. There's ideal capital suffer from 0 interest rate in developed market, and there are people in emerging market who's paying over 20% interest rate per month. And we wanted to connect these 2 dots, basically enabling the interest rate arbitrage and start banking the unbanked and uplifting them. Through the process, we deployed over 100 million in US dollars to over 2 million people. And while we were on this mission of banking the unbanked, we learned that many of the unbanked are also unconnected. And if you're offline, there's no way for us to serve you. Any fintech, crypto, whatever technology is not accessible to you. So we wanted to fix this adjacent problem as well. We initially wanted to use existing solutions like Starlink, obvious reason. Why we reinvent the wheel. But the problem with Starlink in our case is that it was just too expensive for our target demographic. You have to pay about $600 for the satellite dish and $150 per month as a subscription fee. And when GDP per capita is around $2,000, it's just not feasible. So we wanted to see if we can build a satellite technology that focuses on more number of links. And thanks to SpaceX, the whole space industry is now getting commoditized. Now every year it's getting cheaper and cheaper to build and launch your own satellite. So now it became feasible for a smart company like us to build our own satellite. And by learning that, while we were trying so hard not to start this crazy space business, but we ended up starting Spacecoin.
Look, I think the most exciting builders in this space start by saying, wait a minute, why do I have to do this? We tried to build it up. Here we have Somnia sponsoring this place, but building in L1 was not something we wanted to do, right? It was because we had to.
Right.
But I mean, just to be clear here, you've got satellites in space right now.
Right. So we launched our first satellite with SpaceX December last year. It's currently going around the globe, and we're launching 3 more in coming months.
So the thing that struck me here is you helped me to understand from our previous conversation just how centralized the internet is.
Correct.
And how much of a risk that poses to our belief that crypto is decentralized.
Correct.
Do you want to kind of just lay that out? Because I think it's stunning when you explained it.
Yep. So when internet was first built, it started from centralization because it started from as a U.S. military project, and still, even today, all the DNS has to go to the United States. And also because each country controls the internet infrastructure, the governmental telcos, because of the cutbacks, right? You have to spend billions of dollars to lay down the fiber optics cable infrastructure. And because of that enables censorship, and there's no real net neutrality. Even today, if a government or telco decides to block out certain blockchain network, they can identify the validators and just block them out.
So let's be clear here. If the government feels that Bitcoin or Ethereum are engaging in activities that are net not beneficial,
or against their
ideas, specific national interests, right? Then they can just use the centralization of the internet, their control over DNS, to just block out or even seize control or disrupt these networks.
Correct. So that is,
and we've never seen that kind of attack.
We don't talk about it because it's scary.
Of course, right? Yeah. And so the goal here with Spacecoin is you're going to literally build a decentralized network of satellites.
Yep.
I mean, as an engineer, I'm just thinking of like 100 problems just on a software level with that, right?
Yep.
And you're going to solve that issue and create an internet that
Right.
acts as a backup, I guess,
Right,
and also is a primary connection node
Yep.
for, potentially millions, even hundreds of millions of people.
Correct.
So are you completely insane? That's my first question.
I think I am.
No, but seriously, you must have, must be really challenging to be in a space where everyone is chasing short-term wins.
Right.
And you're doing something where, what's the lead time to launch a satellite?
So lead time to launch satellite includes the research and the development of the satellite, and also you have to book the launch slot in advance. So it usually takes about 3 years at minimum.
3 years.
3 years.
In crypto, that's like a century.
Exactly.
So someone's already rugged you within the first 3 months, let alone 3 years of this.
So this is a very long-term project, and everything that you see us doing today actually started like 3 years ago, including the satellite, the technology, the blockchain technology that we're building, and the idea. It's all 3 years old.
So what's interesting to me is like a lot of people think of Starlink and satellite internet as being more free in some ways, right? But you're actually arguing it's more centralized, and I think some of the prior work we've done in defense, the Ukraine war is very close to my heart. I'm actually sanctioned by Russia at the moment, which is wild, but everyone knows the story of Elon deciding not to provide satellite connectivity for forward attacks in Ukraine, right?
So to his defense, to Elon's defense, he was required to.
Of course,
required.
yeah, because the government is the one deciding, right? Yeah.
But that's the problem. Like there is a possibility of somebody turning internet switch on or off. So we want to not even have an option. So that is our goal. We don't want anyone to be able to turn off this network, being completely decentralized, like all the blockchain network has to be.
So let's talk about the layers of this and the incentives, right? How do you really accomplish this? So it's one thing to get satellites in space, but to build a decentralized network to manage the flow of traffic must be incredibly challenging.
So we are open sourcing all our technology, meaning that anybody can build their own satellite or buy a satellite from other manufacturers based on this. So you can think of us as like Android of this telecommunications satellite network. The Starlink is kind of like iOS or Apple ecosystem. They build the whole stack, technological stack, and they own it. Rightfully so. But we always want to have a permissionless or open source option in whatever technology layer that we are building as people. Like we always crave that. In OS, there's Windows, but people have Linux. In iOS, in a smartphone, they have iOS, but there's Android. Money, there's dollar, but Bitcoin, cloud computing, there's AWS, but Ethereum or Somnia. So I think people always crave to have like a permissionless open source network. And that's what we're trying to provide here, giving people an option, a permissionless option.
And you're not going to geo-block anywhere. You're not going to do any form of censorship.
So we are completely open source, completely decentralized from the ground up. And what the satellite operators do with their own satellite is up to them.
So basically, if somebody wanted to censor this network, they would need to physically destroy the infrastructure.
Correct. And also, we're not only using a radio signal, but we are also going to enable optic links. Basically, the satellite link will be a blinking light in the sky, and it's very hard to cover that blinking light.
So I think a lot of the folks listening who might have a technical background would assume that this would result in slower transfer of data.
Right.
Because now you're managing the decentralization problem as well.
Right.
I think you mentioned earlier that you don't think it's going to be slower?
So we initially thought that as well. So we initially thought because of the overhead coming from the decentralization, it will be slower or hard to compete against the head-to-head with the centralized networks. But after researching a couple of years with our telco engineers, we now believe this will actually be 4x better than a centralized version of it. This is because the centralized version has to configure in a central manner, meaning that it's always slower to configure the network than while the network conditions are always changing. It's ever changing. But because it's decentralized, the network will self-heal and self-configure automatically, dynamically, and meaning that it will perform much better. And secondly, because it's a decentralized network and you are basically hiring a node between point A to point B to transfer data, there's no concept of data the congestion. So for example, like when you're using,
It's kind of like a mesh network,
yeah,
in a sense, right?
yeah, and if you have, basically if you pay premium, you can transmit your data faster than everybody else, before everybody else. You'll be highly prioritized, and then your data will be transmitted before everybody else.
I mean, that's incredibly powerful, right? And especially if you've been able to create optimizations that are not really, I guess there's not really the evolutionary pressure to create those
Right.
in centralized networks. And it's something we found as well. Like a lot of folks are surprised
Right.
when new teams can build more efficient, more performant distributed systems. But I think folks don't realize that a lot of the companies that are normally in the space, they don't really have much incentive
Right.
to optimize. Right?
Exactly.
You know, it's why million TPS blockchain was like, you know, everyone was like, how do you do that? And it was, well, no one's really talking about
Right.
the low-level optimizations
Yeah,
that you can accomplish and why you need to do them.
Yeah.
But let's double click on the censorship point. You know, it's an incredibly dangerous idea, right?
Yeah.
And I know you've had military and defense interactions.
Right.
I mean, if you think about something like Russia or China,
Yeah.
or even North Korea,
Right.
where there's an incredible control over information,
Right.
you are effectively enabling,
Yeah.
not necessarily yourself, but companies built on top of your network
Right.
to overcome that.
Yes.
You know, do you worry at all that, like, you know,
I'm freaking out about it. So I genuinely think about the results and people who will be against the idea, but we're currently irrelevant enough, so nobody's chasing after me.
yeah, but you got to do this. I mean, this is incredibly important. Like, and for me, honestly, I worry deeply about the problem of tyranny and the centralized power that a government gets when they have an AI
Right.
that can process every question,
Right.
every piece of information,
Yeah.
and they control the channels themselves.
Right.
And so I think without free money,
Yep.
free information,
Yep.
and a free ability to kind of compute the answers that you want,
Yeah.
people literally can't function, right? You know,
And we should add the connectivity there.
damn right, exactly, right? You know, in order to make that work, because without the connectivity, we can't do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, imagine value of yourself without the access to the internet.
Yeah, it's impossible, right?
Exactly.
You know, there's no path there. Look, I mean, when we think about virtual worlds, obviously a passion of mine, we envision a world where people are going to have so much dependence, so much of their life will expand into a virtual world that if you can just control their access to it, you could really hurt them.
Yeah,
right?
you're basically killing them off.
Yeah, exactly. In a sense, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Wow. So you know, you're literally trying to create a backup layer for society in a way, right? Yeah.
Right. I think we need it, because if there's no pressure, like evolutionary pressure to have a permissionless layer, then the centralized layer will always be censoring, because they have been off.
All right, we're in. So if you're going to get assassinated, we will too, as Sonra. So I'm definitely in. We're going to talk about this offline. We did this last podcast.
Okay.
I've got to stop investing in my guests, but screw it. This sounds amazing. Tell me a bit more about the team. Like, let's talk about that, because extraordinary goals require extraordinary people.
Correct. So the interesting thing about our team is we are coming from 3 different engineering backgrounds. So blockchain team, of course, but space team and also telecommunications team, because this is a combination of 3 very different engineerings, right? Our telecommunications team comes from the background of Samsung mostly, and they have experience in building from 1G to 5G, and they're probably, like, I think they're, if not the only, or one of very few people, like let's say less than 5 people, who can actually build something like this. They are capable of building a cellular network or telecommunication network from ground up.
Wow.
Why? Because they've been building it since 1G. Currently, if you go into like other telecommunications or infrastructure company, there won't be many people or any people who had experience of building the whole network from ground up. They're only experiencing this.
So this is a business to build in South Korea because the talent is there.
The Samsung is probably like one of 3 only companies out there who can build this kind of network, and the talent that we are getting from the former Samsung employees are top notch, if not the only.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stunning. Like, you tell me a little bit more about your personal vision for how the world looks different. You know, let's say you succeed and no one assassinates you or anyone else. Right? Yeah, fingers crossed, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you get there, and you know, what sort of constellation size do we need to see before this affects our lives? And what do you think some of the first applications are going to be beyond connectivity for the underconnected?
Right.
But more like censorship resistance or more, the degen internet.
Right.
I think this is the degen internet, right? So what do you see happening?
So funny enough, the clientele, the potential clientele that we're currently talking with are governments.
Wow.
But governments, that's not China, Russia, or US.
Who don't want the Starlink control
Exactly. Just smaller governments or other governments does not want to rely on Starlink or any other third party or the foreign companies to control their connectivity because they understand this is essential infrastructure. This is basically like relying on another country for your power, another country for your water, gas, right?
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
We're seeing the same thing with AI where dependence on one American company is not the smartest. If you're going to run your entire network on it.
Exactly. So governments are definitely bought in, and they're very supportive to us because we're an open source project that allows them to build their own constellation, satellites, and so on. Military, which is a part of the government, wants to have an option to own satellites and build their customized satellites as well. Even telcos too, because all the telcos are domestic companies if you think about it, right? But competing against Starlink requires
it's very hard.
Very hard because by the nature of the low Earth orbit satellite that they have to launch, it has to go around the globe. And think about a domestic telco company launching their own constellation, meaning that 95% of the time the satellite is not even top of your head, so they're wasted. So the idea of decentralizing and sharing the satellite across different regions is
so let's say we Somnia want to launch some satellites. Let's say we want to really ensure connectivity for some critical function, right? Down the road. Like our satellites would then share resources on a paid basis with other satellites.
Exactly. So satellites, low Earth orbit satellites. So we're gonna as a whole, the globe will launch about 10 to 20,000 satellites every year in coming years because the space industry is getting heavily commoditized now. But because they're mostly launching the low Earth orbit satellites, they are going around the globe, meaning that you only get to see or talk to your satellite for like 5-something minutes per day. And imagine
it's not efficient, right?
Yeah, it's basically wasted, right? But by making them be part of this network, you can have access to not only have access to your satellite 24/7, but you can also use your satellite as a relayer, servicing other satellites. And
so you essentially get as many of your own satellites as you want, guaranteed one-hop kind of coverage.
Right.
But then for the rest of the time, you're connecting to that mesh network of other satellites.
Right. So we're gonna first focus on deploying the backbone layer, and also we're gonna provide the open source and then the component for the other satellites just plug into their satellites, and they can be part of this network that way. They can access so the satellite operator will be access to their satellite 24/7, and also while they're not using their capacity, they can use that capacity to be a relay within the network and earning Spacecoin.
So this is making me think about every other layer that should be decentralized that isn't, right? And I think one thing we talked about before this, which I'm passionate about, is just how, frankly, centralized and non-crypto certain stable coins have become, right?
Sure.
So you think about Tether or Subtle, like, if I'm paying for my Spacecoin service, but I'm actually using Tether or Subtle, why is that not as decentralized as people think, right? Because I think it's a conversation.
Yeah. Many people ask me about this question, but so this is coming because most people don't have the experience of their Tether account getting locked. It does happen.
Of course, because it's not even like seizing a bank account.
Exactly.
It's just a single, essentially a backdoor into,
Exactly. So people don't know that this is possible. That they don't understand the Tether or Circle can be locked out. So they can lock out your address, they can lock out your balance. And it does happen from time to time. It just doesn't happen to everyone.
And people think, look, it's only if you're like a terrorist or a money launderer. Well, actually, if the gambling laws change, right? Or if the information requirements shift, that is the pressure point for governments to put on top of. And so I think for people for whom they want to earn stablecoin yield, they want to put a large amount of their net worth in that. Let's say they're not US citizens. Let's say they live in the Middle East or Africa or China. They're going to be relying heavily on dollars that are really in the US system. And so I think maybe we need a space dollar. Maybe we need maybe we need a decentralized stablecoin.
I believe so too. I think there's a couple of decentralized stablecoin projects.
They've generally been problematic, right? In terms of algorithmic has been tough.
Yep. I don't know what form will be the ideal format for the decentralized stablecoin, but I'm really hoping for it to happen.
Yeah, I feel like that's another startup we should go. No, especially because you have credible neutrality, right?
Yeah.
The reason I say space dollar is the beautiful thing about having the rails genuinely be decentralized. Like you couldn't even know which satellite from which company. You know, the whole thing's a mesh, right?
Right.
Yeah, maybe there's a link there between building that network and building the other pieces.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about the experience for a user. Let's go to the folks who are underserved by traditional networks, right?
Okay.
Tell me a bit about how they will consume this, what they will pay, what will it feel like?
So it's for the end user. They will feel like they're using any other telecommunications network. So it will be like certain telco provider generating, governing the spectrum around their region, and then they will access it, and they'll pay the telco, which will serve as a middleman between the network and the user, in the fiat currency that they use. Behind the scene, the telco network will be spending Spacecoin and giving access to the network to the end user. Or if you're more degen, if you want to have your own connectivity directly to Spacecoin network, you can have your own ground station and directly spending Spacecoin and get connected to the network. Or even you can assign a couple of satellites between point A to point B and have a faster internet than anyone else in the region.
Wow. Incredibly cool and potentially really valuable for businesses that need that security as well.
So think about like traders. Let's say
100%. I was just thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So trade.
Wouldn't the latency be higher? Like bandwidth, I can see, but how would you achieve a fast? Because you pick the number of hops.
Yeah,
and
those satellites, you can hire them to only transmit your data.
Yeah, it's really
There's no network congestion that way. And also because it's not going through a bunch of different routes, because like the internet route is optimizing for the cost for the telco, not speed for the users, right? So while you're signing up for, let's say, a 1 gigabyte data rate, but you actually get like 500 megabytes, for example, because of network congestion, right? But now you can actually hire specific network and fully use it.
Build like an Oracle network of key data that moves very quickly between population segments.
And also invisible for everybody else, because it's a direct link from point A to point B. Nobody else will get to see what you're transmitting.
So tell me a little bit about the token, I don't want to be like one of those crypto people who says when token, but I'm thinking when token, because this is pretty damn awesome.
Right, so we've been preparing this launch of the token soon, and we are expecting to launch a token this year. I already have a date, but I cannot announce it yet, but we're gonna have it soon.
Unbelievable. What can go wrong? What are you most worried about breaking? What's been the biggest setback, actually? I'm curious, atoms are hard, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about this before.
Right. So me coming from the software engineering background, I've never experienced this long cycle of iteration. So when you're developing software, if you can change a line, deploy again, test it, change a line, deploy again. So it's like the iteration cycle is really quick, and that is why the development or the progress of software is very, very fast, right? But since we're doing hardware, not doing just hardware, we're doing space hardware. The cycle of building hardware, launching the satellite, testing it in space is a long freaking cycle. So it's over 3 years. So everything, like I previously mentioned, everything that you see us doing today, we've been doing it 3 years ago. So I feel like I'm living a two different timeline. I'm living 3 years ago. I'm living today.
We started this company 12 years ago. So I've been building cycle after cycle of technology. So I know exactly how you feel. So it's time. Time is your big enemy. You have competitors. I've never heard of anybody doing something similar.
I mean,
not deep into this level.
Right. So there are a couple of other companies doing a connectivity layer. There's Helium doing something related to Wi-Fi routers, and there's 00 doing something with cable, but nobody's doing what we're trying to do. But this is also because it only recently became possible. Only recently the space got started to get commoditized by the SpaceX, and only recently blockchain proved that we can scale and secure a network of trillions of dollars. So
okay, so we've got to get a Somnia satellite in space. We got to figure that out. I'm not joking. We're gonna do that. Okay. So we're gonna have this conversation. All right. Real pleasure.
Thank you.
Unbelievable. Very cool.